another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publisher. For more information, just visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. Now, welcome to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We now present a reading of articles and features from our USA Today for Tuesday, May the 12th of 2026. And your readers today are Jody
and Ellen Blackburn.
And I'm going to start you out on our front page. My first article is about the hantavirus. 2 more travelers on the ship are positive. 1 American among the ill of this deadly cruise outbreak. 2 more people, including an American, have tested positive for the hantavirus after being evacuated from the luxury cruise ship hit by this deadly outbreak, health authorities have said. A French passenger who was evacuated from the MV Hondius tested positive for the virus, and her condition was deteriorating, they said. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services said that on May 10th, that 1 of 17 Americans being repatriated had tested mildly positive for the Andes strain of this virus, while a second one had shown mild symptoms. The 2 individuals were then transferred to Atlanta for further testing, the officials have said. Questions over these positive cases. As the MV Hondius approached the Canary Islands late last week amid protests from the regional government about the risk of spreading this virus, Spain's health minister and the WHO said all passengers were asymptomatic. Now, in a statement, the Spanish Health Ministry queried the U.S. positive test determination, saying an epidemiologist from the European Center for Disease Prevention and Control had tested that American passenger on board the ship since they had been in close contact with a confirmed case. Now, a diagnostic test was performed and then sent to 2 labs. In one of them, the result was considered by U.S. authorities to be a weak positive, although for us, it was inconclusive, the ministry has said. The second American passenger had a mild cough that the medics on board felt was unlikely to be this hantavirus, it added, while the French passenger only exhibited a fever once she had boarded the plane. The captain has said on these challenging weeks. Jan Dabrowski, the captain of the MV Hondius, said in a video message that the past few weeks have been extremely challenging. But what touched me the most, he says, what moved me the most was the patience, the discipline, and the kindness, he said, adding that his thoughts are with those 3 passengers who have died. The UN backs Spain's leadership. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres on May 11th said that the agency backs the Spanish government as it oversees the hantavirus outbreak in coordination with WHO. Now, while the current public health risk from the virus, it remains low, it is important that international health efforts ensure the safety of all, including passengers and crew of the MV Hondius, he wrote. Nearly 150 people from 23 countries, including the U.S., were on board that MV Hondius when the cluster of severe respiratory illnesses among the passengers was first reported on May 3rd. Oceanwide Expeditions, which operates the Netherlands-based Expedition Cruise. But by then, 34 other passengers had departed the vessel, which first sailed from South American country of Argentina back in March, with stops in Antarctic and other locations before then heading to the waters off Cape Verde near the coast of West Africa. Now, the virus was first detected by health officials in Johannesburg on May the 2nd after a British man became sick and was taken into intensive care 21 days after another passenger had died. The man's health has since improved, they have reported on May the 10th, citing a WHO official for that. Now, 4 do remain hospitalized in South Africa, the Netherlands, and Switzerland. On a remote island of Tristan da Cunha, a suspected case was being treated now by a team of medical specialists who were parachuted in by the United Kingdom's military.
DOJ changed the status of pot, but that hasn't made it legal. Despite years of momentum to loosen restrictions on weed, including a recent order from the Trump administration's Department of Justice, there's still a big disconnect between states and the federal government. On April 23rd, the Department of Justice said it was easing federal restrictions by moving some kinds of marijuana with medical use from Schedule 1, the most heavily controlled drugs, to Schedule 3, which can be legally prescribed. But the move doesn't apply to all marijuana, and it doesn't make recreational use legal at the federal level. The Trump administration said it was able to quickly make this narrow change while still pursuing a more sweeping rescheduling. Well, the DOJ's most recent action, someone who uses medical marijuana in a state that has a medical use program, if they follow the state's rules, is no longer breaking federal law, said Heather Trella, Director of Operations and Fellow at the Rockefeller Institute of Government. But experts have told USA Today that the move to reclassify marijuana doesn't satisfy the years-long push to make it legal for other uses and won't resolve conflicts between federal and state laws. This does not make it legal to be used in any circumstance, Trella said. This will not make medical marijuana legal in states that have not legalized it. Despite federal laws, many states have taken the approach of passing their own marijuana laws, often ones far more permissive than the federal government. This has left the nation with a confusing patchwork of state laws. Most states have been authorizing marijuana for medical use even before the rescheduling, and nearly half of all states also say recreational use is okay. Few ban it outright. Americans generally support legalization, according to public opinion polling, and for the past decade, at least 60% have supported legalization. Former President Joe Biden announced his intention to reschedule marijuana and also issue federal pardons for certain marijuana-related crimes. President Donald Trump is also pushing for rescheduling. Some people like it, some people hate it. Some people hate the whole concept of marijuana, Trump said last year. The Department of Justice action on April 23rd did not reschedule all marijuana, a move both Biden and Trump have indicated they support. Instead, it rescheduled products that fall into two categories, including those approved by Food and Drug Administration. The FDA-approved products containing marijuana and marijuana products are regulated by a state marijuana license. These types of marijuana products were moved from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. The Controlled Substances Act classifies drugs from Schedule 1 to Schedule 5 based on their potential for abuse, addictiveness, and medical use. Schedule 1 drugs have a high potential for abuse and the potential to create severe psychological and physical dependence, and no currently accepted medical use, said the Drug Enforcement Administration. Marijuana was considered a Schedule 1 drug when it was first placed on the list in 1970, alongside drugs like heroin, LSD, and ecstasy. Schedule 3 drugs, which include Tylenol with codeine or anabolic steroids, can be lawfully prescribed as medicine regulated by the FDA. The move could also open up potential tax benefits for weed companies in states where medical marijuana is legal. There is some uncertainty about how that will go and whether those businesses have reason to be concerned if they also sell recreational marijuana, which remains federally illegal. A confusing disconnect. Technically, pot has been illegal at every federal level everywhere, even though more and more states have said it's allowed. The wave of medical and recreational laws passed at the state level has left a confusing disconnect. The federal government could at any time choose to prosecute someone for recreationally using marijuana, even if they're in a state that allows it, and they're following all the state rules. But the federal government tends not to do that, and would rather use its resources pursuing crimes it deems more important. It will still sometimes charge someone for marijuana possession when their actions draw too much attention. That could include using weed on federal property. For over a decade, Congress has passed provisions in budget bills that bar the DOJ from using taxpayer money to interfere with states' abilities to implement medical marijuana programs. Could the government even legalize pot? Congress could act on its own to either reschedule marijuana or fully legalize it. It's never had enough momentum in Congress to go very far. Otherwise, the executive branch can pursue a much longer, complicated process to change how it classifies marijuana. Starting at the end of June, the DOJ says it will begin the process of more broadly scheduling marijuana, which will include administrative hearings. By limiting the scope of the rescheduling order in April, the DOJ could bypass some of the formal administrative rulemaking process, allowing the order to go into effect immediately.
Infighting hinders Trump's agenda. The GOP drama in Congress, that could affect the midterms. House Speaker Mike Johnson says he's doing the impossible on Capitol Hill. Over the last few weeks, he's been hard at work skillfully negotiating with White House Republicans and his Senate counterparts to enact President Donald Trump's legislative agenda in a critical midterm election year despite a historically small voting margin. Well, that's one way of looking at it. Now, another perspective, as Senator John Kennedy, who's a Republican, says Mike's having a tough time. He's good, the often frank lawmaker said last month at the Capitol, but he can't work miracles. Kennedy's observations came during a particularly challenging week in the House. Republican infighting was on full display as Johnson struggled to cobble together the votes needed to advance a farm bill, extend a critical government spying program, and end the record-long Department of Homeland Security shutdown. The GOP family drama caused typically painless procedural votes to just drag on for hours. Now, the congressional gridlock, both within and between the Republican-controlled chambers, has already had clear consequences for the American people. Fierce disagreements between the GOP lawmakers in the House and Senate were part of the reason the DHS shutdown dragged on, leaving tens of thousands of federal workers worried about their paychecks and travelers fretting over the long lines at the airport security. But as the midterms draw closer, each public intra-party brawl carries greater risks for the GOP. Democrats, already favored to win back the House in November, are sure to seize on every such squabble to undermine Republicans' pitch to voters that Congress should remain fully under conservative control. Now, hanging in balance is Trump's last chance, possibly ever, to notch big legislative wins. Johnson's shrinking wiggle room. Congress has been straining to do the basics of legislating for a while, according to Kevin Kiley. The California congressman, a Republican turned independent who still caucuses with the GOP, argued the ongoing dysfunction is the fault of no one person, and that's Johnson included. He's operating under, I'd say, especially challenging circumstances. The Speaker can only afford 2 defections on any given vote, so that leaves barely any wiggle room amid a tight legislative schedule, not to mention the fact that yet another scandal-ridden House Republican, North Carolina Representative Chuck Edwards, could face a vote soon costing him his job. Acrimony between the House and Senate Republicans over several issues, from enacting voting restrictions to lowering the state's 60-vote threshold known as a filibuster, isn't making it any easier to get important legislation across the finish line. Even Senate Majority Leader John Thune from South Dakota hasn't been able to fully mask his frustration with the other chamber. On April the 29th, a reporter asked him outside his office how the Senate could keep functioning amid the latest logistical turmoil. Frustrated, Thune shook his head. Now, meanwhile, there's a lot on Congress's plate, including a GOP plan to funnel more than $70 billion to immigration enforcement, then another $1 billion for security in a new White House ballroom. The Pentagon is also preparing a supplemental defense spending request amid the Iran war, which has already cost our taxpayers roughly $25 billion. And there are bipartisan efforts afoot, too. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are clamoring to enact changes to rein in a spy law. Others want to get to work soon to put more guardrails on online betting. And a massive bipartisan housing reform bill is working its way through both chambers, though it has been stalled in the House for weeks due to concerns from some in the GOP. When you're operating within such a small majority, especially, it's maybe a good reason to try and do things in a bipartisan way, whenever that's possible, Kiley has said. The math, it becomes a lot easier then, and it tends to lead to better policy as well.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:13. A bear kills a man at Glacier National Park. The hiker from Florida dies in the first attack since 1998. A Florida man who went missing while hiking in Glacier National Park in Montana was killed by a bear in what authorities believe to be the first deadly bear attack at the park since 1998. The body of the hiker was recovered and identified as Anthony Polio, 33 years old, of Davie, Florida, the National Park Service said in a news release. Polio was last heard from May 3rd after he communicated his plans to hike toward the Mount Brown Fire Lookout. His last known message was sent around 8:20 p.m. local time on May 3rd, and the park was notified about his disappearance on the afternoon of May 4th. Park rangers had concentrated their search efforts in the Mount Brown and Snyder Lakes area and adjacent trail corridors. Aerial resources and local rescue crews also assisted in the search. Polio's body was discovered by search and rescue crews at around 12 p.m. local time on May 6th, about 50 feet off the Mount Brown Trail in a densely wooded area with downed timber, according to the Park Service. Crews also found some of Polio's personal items about 2.5 miles from the trailhead. At the time of the discovery, the Park Service said Polio's injuries were consistent with those sustained by a bear encounter. The sequence of events leading to the bear encounter remains under investigation. However, evidence suggests that this was a surprise encounter. The National Park Service noted that a section of the trail where the incident occurred remains temporarily closed as authorities investigate and reminded park visitors to stay off closed trails. The agency said park staff were working to determine next steps based on field assessments and wildlife behavior monitoring. Bear incidents at Glacial National Park. Fatal bear encounters are uncommon at Glacier National Park, located near the Canada-United States border in northwestern Montana. The park said the last deadly bear attack at the park occurred in 1998 in the Two Medicine region. On May 17, 1998, a solo hiker, Craig Dahl, was attacked at the Scenic Point Trail in the Two Medicine Valley. Wildlife authorities killed a female bear and 2 cubs in response to Dahl's death. Since the park was established, there have been 10 confirmed grizzly bear-related fatalities from 1967 to 1998. The last time a bear injured a human at Glacier National Park was in August of 2025. A 34-year-old woman was injured by a brown-colored bear while backcountry hiking with another person near Lake Janet. The agency said in a news release at the time, a female bear and her 2 cubs charged the woman and she dove off the trail, according to the Park Service. The female bear swiped at the woman, injuring her arm and shoulder. The encounter ended after her hiking partner used bear spray, causing the bear to immediately run away. The hikers then used another group's satellite communicator to contact park dispatch and send an SOS, who found the woman in stable condition. No action will be taken against the bear at this time. The encounter was a surprise to a sow with 2 cubs that reacted defensively. The area the trail hiking party was on is confined by the lake and dense brush, which the bear came out of. The species of the bear could not be positively identified. Other bear incidents in the United States. The fatal bear encounter at Glacier National Park occurred in the same week that 2 hikers were injured in a bear attack at Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming. At the time, the agency had said in a news release that the 2 hikers sustained injuries in an attack by 1 or more bears on a trail near the Old Faithful Geyser on May 4th. In an update on May 7th, the agency said a 15-year-old boy and a 28-year-old man were hiking the Mystic Falls Trail when they were injured. Authorities responded to the scene and provided aid before transporting the 2 hikers from the area by helicopter. The incident remains under investigation, but the agency said the park staff believe a female grizzly bear with 2 or 3 cubs was involved in the encounter. This is the first incident of a bear injuring a person in Yellowstone in 2026, the Park Service said. The last time a visitor was injured by a bear in the park was in September 2025. The last human fatality caused by a bear in Yellowstone occurred in 2015 in the Lake Village area. In April, 2 Army U.S. soldiers were injured after encountering a brown bear during a training at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson in Anchorage, Alaska. Both soldiers deployed bear spray during the incident and were treated for their injuries. Authorities of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, which spans parts of North Carolina and Tennessee, also reported a spike in encounters between aggressive bears and humans in April.
Trump says Iran ceasefire, it's on life support. The president rejects the latest offer as unacceptable. President Donald Trump said the ceasefire with Iran is on life support since the 2 countries are unable to reach an agreement to end the war and fighting is resuming in the Strait of Hormuz. During a White House event, Trump said the ceasefire has been unbelievably weak, and he called Iran's latest peace proposal a piece of garbage. I would say the ceasefire is on massive life support, where the doctor walks in and says, "Sir, your loved one has approximately a 1% chance of living," Trump said. He previously had rejected Iran's response to the U.S.'s latest proposal to end the war, declaring it totally unacceptable in a May 10th social media post, though he did not provide further details. The comments dashed hopes for an imminent end to the U.S.-Israel war on Iran that has caused widespread damage in the Middle East. It has paralyzed maritime traffic in the Strait of Hormuz, and it has driven up global energy prices. 10 days of attacks. The biggest flare-ups in fighting since the ceasefire began have occurred in the recent days in and around the Strait of Hormuz. The United Arab Emirates said on May 10th that it intercepted 2 drones coming in from Iran and Qatar, condemned a drone attack that hit a cargo ship coming from Abu Dhabi in its waters. Kuwait said its air defenses had dealt with hostile drones that entered its airspace. Kazim Garibati, Iran's deputy foreign minister for international affairs, warned the French and the British that any potential naval development to the strait would be met with military force. It is emphasized that the presence of French and British warships or those of any other country potentially accompanying the illegal and internationally unlawful actions of the U.S. in the Strait of Hormuz will be met with decisive and immediate response, he wrote on X on May the 10th. Then, French President Emmanuel Macron said at a news conference in Kenya that France has never considered deploying forces to the region, but it is ready to support security in the strait after the hostilities end. Netanyahu has said the war is not over in a 60 Minutes interview. In an interview with CBS's 60 Minutes that aired on May the 10th, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that the war is not over. The Prime Minister alleged that Iran still has nuclear material that could be removed if you go in and you take it out, in an excerpt of the interview released hours before Trump's post. Netanyahu said Trump told him that, "I want to go in there," and refused to rule out the use of American forces to retrieve that nuclear material. "I'm not going to talk about the military means," Netanyahu said. "I think it can be done physically." Netanyahu added that military goals have not been completed. Israel receives about $3.8 billion of military aid from the U.S. annually, but Netanyahu said he wanted to wean the country off of that.
The Army recovers the body of a missing U.S. soldier. He went missing while training in Morocco. The body of a U.S. soldier who went missing during a training exercise in southwestern Morocco this month has been recovered, the U.S. Army announced on May 10th. First Lieutenant Kendrick Lamont Key, Jr., 27 years old, was one of two U.S. soldiers who went missing on May 2nd near the Camp Draw training area. The Army said in a news release, a Moroccan military search team found Key's body along the shoreline about 8:55 local time on May 9th, about a mile from where the soldiers were reported missing. Today we mourn the loss of Lieutenant Kendrick Key, whose remains were recovered in Morocco. Brigadier General Curtis King, the commanding general of the 10th Army Air and Missile Defense Command, said in a statement, "Our hearts are with his family, friends, teammates, and all who knew and served alongside him. The 10th Army Air and Missile Defense Command family is grieving, and we will continue to support one another and First Lieutenant Key's family as we honor his life and service." The two U.S. service members who were missing were participating in military exercises known as African Line 26. African Line is an annual joint exercise hosted by Morocco, Ghana, Senegal, and Tunisia that aims to strengthen interoperability among U.S. forces, NATO allies, and African partner nations, according to the U.S. Army of Europe and Africa website. The Moroccan portion of the exercise kicked off on April 27th, according to the U.S. Army, and the activities in Morocco involved about 5,000 personnel from more than 40 nations and more than 30 U.S.-based industry partners. And who was Lieutenant Kendrick Lamont Key Jr.? Key of Richmond, Virginia, was assigned to the Charlie Battery, the 5th Battalion of the 4th Air Defense Artillery Regiment of the 10th Army and Air Missile Defense Command, according to the Army. He also served as a 14A Air Defense Artillery Officer. Key earned a Bachelor of Science in Marketing from the Methodist University of Fayetteville, North Carolina, with minors in international business, entrepreneurship, and business administration. He later entered the military service in 2023 as an officer candidate, earning his commission through Officer Candidate School in 2024 as an Air Defense Artillery Officer. According to the Army, Key joined the Charlie Battery in 2025 and was a platoon leader. He was known for the care he showed for his soldiers, his commitment to others, and the relationships he built across the formation. In a statement, Lieutenant Colonel Chris Couch, commander of the 5-4 ADR, described Key as an exceptional teammate and said his outfit is mourning Key. Kendrick embodied the highest standards of service as a selfless, inspirational leader whose unwavering dedication to his soldiers and their development leaves an enduring legacy within our ranks. Key's next of kin were notified, the Army said. He is survived by his father, Kendrick Key Sr., and his mother, Jihan Key, his sister, Dakota DeBose Hill, and his brother-in-law, U.S. Army Specialist James Brown. Search efforts are ongoing for the second U.S. soldier. The Army said search and rescue efforts for the second U.S. soldier, who has not been identified, will continue. More than 1,000 U.S. and Moroccan military and civil personnel have been involved in the search operation. While I was in Morocco, quote, I was able to witness the professionalism and urgency of the combined search effort, said USA Europe AF Commander General Christopher Donahue. Our Moroccan hosts provided every asset we requested and incredible subject matter expertise from mountaineering and dive teams to UAS operators, aircraft, and maritime assets. We're incredibly grateful for the efforts they, along with our teammates from across the services, continue to pour in as we search for our remaining soldier.
Now, the suspect in the press dinner shooting enters a not guilty plea. The man who's accused of attempting to assassinate President Donald Trump at a White House reporters' gala last month has pleaded not guilty to all charges on May the 11th. Cole Allen, who's 31, did not speak in court as his attorney entered that plea. The charges include attempted assassination of the president, assault on a federal officer, and firearms offenses. Now, prosecutors allege Allen fired a shotgun at a Secret Service agent and then stormed a security checkpoint in a foiled attack on Trump and other members of his administration at that White House Correspondents' Dinner. Investigators say Allen traveled to Washington by train, and he carried a shotgun, pistol, and knives, and then booked a room in the Washington Hilton where that April 25th dinner did take place. Allen wore an orange jumpsuit and was shackled at the waist during the brief court proceeding. It was his first appearance in Washington, D.C. federal court before the judge who will preside over the remainder of the case, U.S. District Judge Trevor McFadden. A magistrate judge apologized to Allen and grilled a jailed representative over the conditions that Allen faced. His lawyer says he's been kept alone in a cell and was denied access to a Bible. He had been placed on suicide precautions and was isolated. The preceding May 11th previewed the next legal battle in the case. Allen's lawyers want to have Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche and the U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro disqualified because they were present and they may have been among Allen's alleged targets. Now, Allen's lawyer, who's Eugene Ohm, said the defense is likely to seek recusal of the entire U.S. Attorney's office in Washington, which Pirro leads because of her friendship with Trump and the status as a potential victim. It is wholly inappropriate for the victims of an alleged event like this to be individually prosecuting the case, Ohm said. Prosecutors are set to respond to the defense's legal filing by May the 22nd. Pirro previously told CNN that my ability to prosecute the case, it has nothing to do with my being there. Now, Allen is detained pending his trial after he dropped his fight against pretrial detention April 30th. He faces a life term if he is convicted.
The tick season may be shaping up to be one of the worst on record. An earlier, longer warm weather boosts ticks. This year's tick season could be one of the worst on record, according to federal data and experts. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Ticks Bite Data Tracker, which uses real-time emergency room surveillance, shows weekly tick bite emergency room visits are higher than historic averages in every U.S. region except the South Central states, with the Northeast recording the highest levels so far in 2026. During the fourth week of April, about 114 out of every 100,000 emergency department visits nationwide were for tick bites, the highest rate at this point in the year since at least 2017. Nationally, the agency estimates that about 31 million people are bitten by ticks each year, and roughly 476,000 Americans are treated annually for Lyme disease, the most common tick-borne illness. Tick season is here, and these tiny bites can make you seriously sick, said an epidemiologist. That means ticks are out and people are getting bitten, so now is the time for people to take steps to protect themselves and their loved ones. While the CDC only tracks emergency room visits related to tick bites, not tick bites or the presence of ticks overall, the increase in these visits indicates the multiple factors, including weather, normal year-to-year variation in tick survival and expansion of tick populations into new geographic areas, could result in one of the most prolific tick bite seasons in recent memory. However, we won't know how this year overall will compare to other years until the season is over. And here's why it's looking especially bad. Tick season was once relegated to warmer summer months, and that's no longer the case. As we see the trend over time of these milder winters and kind of shorter shoulder seasons, this spring it feels like it just goes from winter to summer This allows for a greater proportion of the pig population to survive the winter, even in places where there's been snow cover. Warmer weather arriving earlier and lasting longer, paired with relatively balmy winter temperatures, has enabled pests to proliferate almost year-round in some areas. In that layer of snow, you might expect to kill them off. It serves as more of a cozy blanket. Ticks actually do better when there's more snow rather than less snow because the snowpack is insulating for them. How to prep for spending out time? Wear repellent, cover your exposed skin with clothing and proper footwear, and remove clothing and do a tick check as soon as you return home. Well, you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:30 and we go on to the money section. U.S. oil exports rise with prices. Gas costs will depend on how long the disruptions last. The United States exported oil at record levels in April, rushing to fill a global supply gap amid the Iran war, even as gas and oil prices remain stubbornly elevated. April exports averaged 5.3 million barrels per day over 4 weeks, up from 3.8 million at the end of March, according to the U.S. Energy Information weekly exports data. The week ending April 24th was the standout as exports spiked to 6.4 million barrels per day, before pulling back to 4.8 million barrels per day the following week. Despite a drop of more than 2 million barrels per day, crude exports remain well above the roughly 4 million barrels shipped overseas daily in the same period last year. That's really a big week jump, said Brian Prest, economist at Resources for the Future. That week ending April 24th is the first week in modern American history where the U.S. has been a net crude oil exporter. The surge of U.S. exports reflects how oil markets are adapting to the supply disruption caused by Iran's closure of the Strait of Hormuz following the U.S. and Israeli strikes on the country. Market participants are finding ways to connect supply and demand amid a historic supply disruption. Oil markets are operating efficiently even in a time of crisis. The world has lost 13 million barrels per day from the Middle East for more than 2 months due to the war. Regions that rely heavily on Middle Eastern oil, especially Asia, are facing supply shortages. The United States, the world's largest oil producer, thus has an opportunity to temporarily fill in gaps in the oil supply around the world. Right now, it's better for U.S. producers to export oil because overseas buyers are paying more for it than the domestic ones would. Since the start of the war, the United States has exported more than 280 million barrels over 9 weeks, drawing down the country's strategic petroleum reserves in the process. The Department of Energy released nearly 23 million barrels from the reserve since late March, part of the 172 million barrels the Department of Energy is authorized to release by President Trump. As of May 1st, the reserve stood at around 392 million barrels. Yet oil and gas prices have remained elevated. Brent crude oil, the international benchmark, was trading above $100 a barrel as of 4 p.m. on May 6th. West Texas Intermediate crude, which comes from American producers, fetched about $95 a barrel. That could still shift at some point, however. If WTI is used more and Brent demand ticks lower, the gap between the two prices may narrow, making WTI, West Texas Intermediate crude, less attractive. More importantly, the cost of transporting Brent from the Gulf Coast to places such as Asia and Europe may also start to add up. The experts say keeping more oil in the United States would not necessarily lower domestic gasoline prices. The price of oil, which is used everywhere in the world, is set globally. The supply disruption anywhere increases prices everywhere. The national average gas price per gallon in the United States is $4.54, according to the latest USA AAA data. Even if crude oil stays in the United States, domestic refineries are already running near maximum capacity. No matter how much more crude oil you have instead of sending overseas, you're not going to be able to create more gasoline here. What's next? Experts say the U.S. gas price continues to rise or begins to fall will depend on how long disruptions in the Middle East last. We are unfortunately probably on our way to revisiting that all-time high of nationwide pump price, just above $5 a gallon, that we saw in 2022. In summer of 22, the national average gas price in the United States passed $5 a gallon, driven by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It's simply not sustainable. As the United States continues to supply the oil to the rest of the world to fill the energy gap created by the war, we have to get those Middle East export flows going again if we want to have reasonable fuel prices. But American companies also might boost supply. On May 5th, Trump hailed what he called the great progress toward a deal with Iran. Global oil markets responded by sending prices down sharply. Still, progress has been elusive so far in the conflict, and the longer it drags on, the more incentive U.S. producers have to increase their output. Diamondback Energy, a shale producer, on May 4th said it would step up both its fracking and drilling operations, calling higher prices the catalyst. Wilson thinks other producers may follow suit. At the end of the day, U.S. consumers will pay prices for what's going on in a global market. Whether that's good or bad depends on those global events. On the other hand, if the conflict drags on long enough, U.S. legislators may be motivated to set policy to shield American consumers. As recently as 2016, U.S. producers weren't allowed to export oil. That ban was lifted only because domestic refineries couldn't keep up.
Americans fear high hospital bills. Research shows that medical debt is widespread. Most Americans have health insurance, but that doesn't ease the fears of medical emergency, pushing them to financial brink. Nearly 97% of the 1,507 Americans who were surveyed in February said they had health insurance, but still 94.7% of these insured said that they still worry about hospital bills. On average, a $4,354 tab would be the financial breaking point for Americans, data has showed. 7 in 10 Americans said an unexpected medical bill under $10,000 would hamper their ability to cover their essential expenses. Medical debt is widespread. Americans now owe more than $220 billion in total. Insurance gap. A reason one hospital visit can devastate household finances is that nearly 1 in 4 Americans are underinsured, according to a study. Underinsured means people are exposed to high out-of-the-pocket and unaffordable costs despite having insurance. Now, among respondents with long-term conditions, nearly 1 in 3 said their condition has worsened because they could not afford medication. Almost 96% said they had to choose between medication and essentials like their food. So how long can medical debt saddle you? Only 6.7% of those that were surveyed believe that they can clear their medical debt within a year. Almost 90% believe it will take 1 to 3 years to pay that off. How can people manage their medical debt? The best way to manage medical debt expenses is to plan, the experts say. Know your deductible, your out-of-pocket maximum, and your co-insurance rate before you even need them. If you're on a high deductible plan, consider paying into a health savings account, an HSA. Also, they say double check your medical bills that are sent to you by asking for an itemized statement. Look for errors and overcharges. That happens. It even happened to former U.S. Surgeon General Jerome Adams, who posted a copy of his nearly $5,000 emergency room hospital after insurance had paid its portion. The bill left him flabbergasted. So research isn't disputed a medical bill. It can be arduous, but companies like Goodbill and Resolve can help you get your bill lowered. Now, another option is to ask financial assistance programs before paying. Many hospitals, they do offer these, but they are not always advertised, says J.G. Wentworth, the spokesperson.
Think twice before eating a grape at the grocery store. You're in Wegmans looking through the produce section for just the right bag of grapes or blueberries. Can you pop one in your mouth? Should you? Is it legal? Will you do jail time? The practice is a contentious one. Grape munchers say they just want to make sure they taste good before buying them. Besides, no one will miss 1 or 2. A recent Fort Myers News Press poll on sampling produce found 80% of the respondents chose, no, it's rude, like stealing, and it could impact your health. The Simpsons even weighed in on the matter in an early episode, when Lisa called out Marge for eating grapes, resulting in a shameful checkout confession and an exasperated clerk. On Everybody Loves Raymond, Ray's father, Frank, played by Peter Boyle, got into a shouting match with the produce manager over some pilfered trail mix. For the most part, grocery stores are pretty chill about it. Most, such as Sprouts Farmer and Market, request that you ask someone first. Store owners are aware that free samples, in moderation, often results in sales. Whole Foods goes further with a try before you buy policy. Our team members can open a bag of chips, slice a piece of fruit, or twist open a bottle of iced tea, the company said on its website. That way you can bring home the products you like. Does Publix mind if you eat a few grapes? If a customer would like to sample an item in produce, Publix said, We invite them to ask for the produce manager assistant or assistant produce manager, and they'll be happy to assist. Is sampling produce illegal? Can you get arrested or fined for swiping a grape? Only if you're creating a nuisance or downing half a bag of them, or even then, you'd likely just be asked to leave. There's no specific federal law about theft of produce at that scale. That wouldn't be more trouble than it's worth to enforce. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration's Food Code doesn't mention it, although it does have safety guidelines for stores offering produce as samples. Is it a good idea to eat grapes or other produce while shopping? There are several good reasons not to snarf down produce in the store that is set out for that purpose, even if you plan to buy it. One is theft. If you eat more than a few items from a bag sold by weight, you'll be underpaying when you check out. If you sample from a product that doesn't sell by weight and then don't buy it, the next person will get less than they paid for. Number two, it's poor etiquette and bad hygiene. Grazing in the produce section can set a bad example for any children who see you do it. It's inconsiderate to other shoppers who are left with the food that you've been handling. Number three, it can be a health risk. Supermarket produce may still have traces of pesticides, contamination from the farm, and whatever the grocery store employees had on their hands. Is it safe to eat grapes in the store? Excess moisture on fresh fruits and vegetables cause them to spoil faster, so stores usually put them out for sale as is. Shoppers are expected and encouraged to wash their produce before they use it. That means that the grapes you pop into your mouth in the store could still be dusted with pesticides, including PFAS or forever chemicals, or fecal matter from farm animals, debris from shipping, and other things you probably don't want to swallow. In recent years, several different multi-state salmonella outbreaks have started with Florida-grown produce. In the Environmental Working Group's EWG 2026 Dirty Dozen Guide to Produce, with the highest level of pesticide residues, based on laboratory tests conducted by the Department of Agriculture's Pesticide Data Program, grapes were number 4 on the list, right after strawberries. Next were nectarines, peaches, cherries, apples, blackberries, pears, potatoes, and blueberries. First on the list, spinach, which the report said has more pesticide residue by weight than any other type of produce, followed by greens such as kale. So while some minor produce grazing isn't illegal, there may be other consequences. You should never sample what you don't plan to buy. Ask an employee for help. They'll clean and even slice the produce before bringing it to you. How to clean your produce. Food processing is monitored at local, state, and federal levels, but then some things can get through. The FDA offers these tips. 1. Choose produce that isn't bruised or damaged, and cut away any damage or bruising that occurs after you buy it. Number 2. Wash your hands for 20 seconds with warm water and soap before and after preparing fresh produce. 3. Thoroughly rinse fruits and vegetables under running water before eating or preparing them, especially if they won't be cooked. Gently rub produce under water. Soap or a produce wash is not necessary. And use a clean vegetable brush to scrub firm produce such as melons and cucumbers. 4. Dry produce with a clean cloth or paper towel to further reduce bacteria that may be present. 5. Remove the outermost leaves of a head of lettuce or cabbage. 6. Store the perishable produce in the refrigerator at or below 40 degrees. 7. Avoid eating raw sprouts such as alfalfa, clover, radish, and mung bean. And lastly, drink only pasteurized or shelf-stable fruits and vegetable juices.
And you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on our Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And our time is 12:43. We're still in the money section. Now we have USA Today's column about human resources, which is written by the expert, Johnny C. Taylor. Take-home assignment after interview. It offers clues to culture. Here's our first question. I applied for a job and was given a take-home assignment as part of the interview. However, the project feels excessive and it looks like more real work than the teams would normally be paid to do. Is it reasonable to push back or decline an assignment like this? How should candidates handle requests that cross the line? And this question comes from Terrence. So here's Johnny's answer for Terrence. Yes, you can push back, and yes, you can decline. But before you do that, ask yourself a more important question. What is this process telling you? Interviews are a two-way evaluation. The company is assessing your skills, and you're assessing their judgment and their culture and what they prioritize in candidates. A take-home assignment is not just a test of your ability, it's a preview of your expectations. These projects often are legitimate skills demonstrations. Employers want proof that you can do the work. That is reasonable. A focused, time-bound assignment tied directly to the role, that is fair. But at the same time, if the request makes you feel uneasy about putting in that much time, it may signal a cultural misalignment. The interview process is your first glimpse into a company's culture and how they operate. You don't need to be confrontational. You can simply respond professionally and ask some clarifying questions like, how long should this take? How will it be evaluated? Is there flexibility in scope? Serious employers will have thoughtful answers. Be realistic, though. As a candidate, you're unlikely to overhaul an established hiring practice. If this is how they hire, well, it's probably how they operate. Your decision isn't about changing them. It's about deciding whether this process and ultimately this environment does fit you. Also, step back and weigh the full opportunity. Are the compensation, growth prospects, leadership, reputation, and mission, are they strong enough for you to justify the lift? Or does this feel like an early warning sign that you may not be fully aligned with this organization? Not every opportunity deserves your time, and not every process deserves your participation. If you choose to opt out, do it professionally. First, thank them. Keep the door open. The professional world is small. And then remember, the hiring process is often the most organized a company will ever be. If it feels misaligned now, it likely won't feel better later on. Trust your judgment.
Millions may be owed a refund from the COVID era. Tens of millions of Americans may not realize they could be owed an IRS refund from the COVID-19 era. So the International Taxpayer Association Advocate, NTA, is sounding the alarm to let them know the deadline to claim it is fast approaching. Many taxpayers affected by this issue have low and moderate incomes, NTA said in a blog post. These taxpayers are less likely to have professional representation and to learn about complex legal developments like this one. As a result, they face a greater risk of missing the opportunity to claim refunds to which they may be entitled. Potential refunds or abatement of penalties stems from a court ruling in Kwong versus United States, interpreting a tax rule that says once a federally declared disaster is in effect, the tax code mandates postponement of applicable tax deadlines for the disaster period plus 60 days. The court ruled the COVID-19 public health emergency was from January 20th of 2020 through May 11, 2023, and it fell under this provision. Add in 60 days, the new tax deadline for the tax year 2019, 2020, 21, and 2022 filings would have been July 10th, 2023. Without taxes due, the IRS likely also had no right to level penalties and interest during that window, tax lawyers said. So if you were charged penalties or fees, you may be owed a refund, they said. The IRS disagrees with the ruling, and the Department of Justice will probably appeal. But until then, the taxpayers must make a claim to preserve their refund and if it's approved. For taxpayers dealing with financial pressures, these amounts can make a real difference, NTA said. But most taxpayers must act by July 10th of 2026, that's this year, to request their potential refunds. What could taxpayers receive if the ruling is affirmed? According to the NTA, taxpayers may be owed penalties assessed for failure to timely file returns, failure to pay taxes, or failure to make estimated tax payments. Or they may be owed for interest that began accruing earlier than it should have, or not at all. Or they may be owed refunds for overpayment of interest for the 2023 disaster period. Some practitioners believe that even where the underlying liability arose before the disaster period began, you may not have had to pay interest or penalties during that period. Again, the IRS disagrees. Taxpayers may have to wait to get their final answer, however. Again, to preserve the right to potential refund, they must make the claim by July 10th. Who's affected? A broad group of taxpayers may be entitled to the refund, experts said. Impacted taxpayers represent a broad cross-section of the public, including individuals, small businesses, large corporations, estates, and trusts. The issue reaches taxpayers with obligations related to income, employment, the state, gift, and excise taxes. It may also affect taxpayers who filed late international information returns, which can result in significant penalties even when no tax is due. How does someone know if they may be owed a refund? Taxpayers need to check their tax records to see if the IRS leveled any penalties or interest during the tax filing pause, said John Wasser, a partner at Fox Rothschild who focuses on tax issues. They can do that either by asking their tax professionals or looking at the IRS tax transcript. IRS tax account transcripts show each year's tax information, including filing status, taxable income, and adjustments made after the original return was processed. It also shows payments, penalties, and interest with dates they were made or assessed. Tax account transcripts are available online by registering to use the individual online account to view, print, or download, or by mail, according to the IRS. Americans can order one by mail on the IRS website or by calling the automated phone transcript service at 800-908-9946. That's 800-908-9946. And it should arrive in 5 to 10 calendar days. What do taxpayers need to do to protect their right to a refund? Tax professionals can file claims on behalf of a taxpayer, or a taxpayer may file one using a claim for refund and request for abatement form, also known as the IRS Form 843, using information from the tax transcript. The taxpayer should specify in the form that it's a protective claim based on the Kwong versus United States decision regarding Section 7508, parentheses, lowercase d, and the COVID-19 disaster period. That's Section 7508A, lowercase d, in parentheses, and the COVID-19 disaster period. You're basically telling the IRS, here's a refund claim, put it on hold for now, until the case has a final determination. If, after all the litigation is complete, and the IRS must issue refunds, you would have preserved your right to claim your refund.
8.2 million food and drink containers are recalled. Thermos issues recall due to laceration injuries. Thermos has issued a recall for roughly 8.2 million food jars and beverage bottles sold nationwide after more than 24 people reported laceration injuries or permanent vision loss. Now, according to a notice April 30th on the Consumer Product Safety Commission website, Thermos, an insulated food and beverage container manufacturer, is recalling about 5.8 million stainless King food jars and 2.3 million Sportman food and beverage bottles. If perishable food or beverages are stored in the container for an extended period of time, the stopper can forcefully eject when it is opened, which then can result in serious impact injury and laceration hazards to the consumer. The products were sold for $30 at Target, Walmart, and other stores, as well as online at Amazon.com, Walmart.com, Target.com, and Thermos.com from March of 2008 to July of 24. So how many people have been injured? As of April the 30th, Thermos has received 27 reports of people requiring medical attention after the stopper struck them, with 3 people suffered permanent vision loss. The affected models. Here are the recalled model numbers, which are printed on the bottom of that product. First is Thermos Stainless King food jars, manufactured before July of 23. It's SK3000 and SK3020. Then there's the Thermos Sportman food and beverage bottles. All units are SK3010. Then we have food jars and food and beverage bottles. All units SK3000, that's 16 ounce, SK3020, that's 24 ounce, SK3010, and that's 40 ounce. The company said consumers should stop using the products immediately and contact Thermos to receive a free replacement pressure relief stopper or perhaps replacement bottle, depending on the model. For recalled 3,030 food jars, consumers will be asked to throw away the stopper and send a photo of the disposed stopper right to Thermos. For recalled 3010 bottles, consumers will be asked to return their recalled bottle to Thermos using a prepaid shipping label. For information on how to replace the faulty container, you can just visit Thermos's recall page, or you can call 662-563-6822 from 7 a.m. to 3:30. Anything else, Alan?
We have officials are probing the cause of a Miami boat explosion. The 11 injuries that came after a possible boat explosion in Miami may be tied to the boat's hatches. They were allegedly not open when the ignition was started. An eyewitness told local media outlet CBS 12. Miami-Dade Fire and Rescue Battalion Chief Juan Arias said the first responders were dispatched around 12:48 p.m. on May 9th. After reports of an explosion in the waters off Miami's Hull over Sandbar, crews arrived and located multiple victims. 11 people were treated at the scene before being transported to area hospitals. Some of the victims sustained burn injuries, though there was no comment on the full extent of their conditions. Officials told USA Today on May 10th the cause of the possible explosion is under investigation. Witness said he blew people out of the boat. Speaking of CBS News Miami, Patrick Lee, a boat charter captain who witnessed the incident, described seeing 3 people fly out of the boat after the explosion. Lee speculated that the gasoline fumes ignited after the boat was started, causing the explosion. People got on board, and he turned the key and didn't open the hatches and didn't turn on the blowers, and he blew the people out of the boat, Lee told the outlet. The explosion triggers large-scale response. Witnesses told CBS 12 that crews responded to the scene within minutes. They described passengers suffering burns being carried away on stretchers. I just saw a lot of them were burns all over them, Lee said. More than 25 units from 4 organizations responded to the scene, including the local fire department, an ocean rescue team, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, and the U.S. Coast Guard. This time of year, we have a lot of boats on the water, so it's always good to make sure you have a radio with you, and life vests and fire extinguishers, Arias told CBS 12, and also an experienced boater with you.
And you've been listening to a reading of articles from our USA Today for Tuesday, May the 12th on our Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return to you for more readings just after our short break now. And again, your readers today are Jody
and Alan Blackburn.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window, in the Apple App Store, or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's issue of USA Today. Your readers are
Jody.
and Alan Blackburn, and we're on the sports section. Ejected Wemby is learning harsh lessons. This would have been a very different game had Victor Wembanyama been on the floor for most of it. The San Antonio Spurs wasted a chance to take a commanding 3-1 NBA playoff series lead on May 10th over the Minnesota Timberwolves in the Western Conference semifinals when Wembanyama's second quarter ejection sabotaged their efforts. Wembanyama, also called Wemby, 22 years old, is a bright young player who has been transparent about his relative inexperience in playoff basketball. Treat this as another lesson, rather unfairly, that he'll have to learn. Because not only did Wemby miss 2.5 quarters of an eventual 5-point loss, he might face further discipline from the NBA league office, though not a possible suspension. With Game 5 set for May 12th today at 8 p.m. on Peacock, the NBA was expected to review the incident and make a determination on discipline by the evening of May 11th. According to ESPN's Shams Charania, Wemby has avoided suspension. No team is better than the Timberwolves at annoying opposing players, getting under their skin to force them to respond in ways that are uncharacteristic. Jaden McDaniels, an all-world defender and sometimes troll, is the perfect example. McDaniels, one series after he called out the entire Denver Nuggets by name for being all bad defenders, joined teammate Naz Reid in the second quarter of Game 4 and pestering Wemby to the point of frustration that prompted the Spurs phenom to throw a reckless elbow at Reid's throat. It was a dangerous play, and Reid and Wemby are both fortunate the elbow appeared to catch Reid's collarbone before striking his throat. And to be completely fair to Wemby, McDaniels and Reid were aggressively harassing him, and he should have had the right to protect himself. This is nothing new. At some level, it's just starting to get actually disgusting, just in terms of when he tries to fight through things and be professional and mature and deal with some of that stuff. Spurs coach Mitch Johnson told reporters after the game. I'm glad he took matters into his own hands. Not at all in terms of hitting Naz Reid. I want to be very clear about that. I'm glad Naz Reid is okay, but I didn't want him to elbow him. But he's going to have to protect himself if they're not. But Wemby will have to learn that he and the Spurs tend to lose more in cases like this. He's one of the top 3 best players in the world, and teams are going to hunt and target him. Well, that's an attempt to put him in foul trouble or like the night of May 10th to get in his head. This is only magnified in the playoffs when a suspension can swing an entire series. Wembanyama is too good. No player impacts the game in both ends the way he does. His defensive presence alters the way opposing teams attack San Antonio, and his shooting range and offensive portfolio are singular for someone with his frame. After playing just 12 minutes and 29 seconds, he left with 4 points on 2 of 5 shooting, adding 4 rebounds and 1 assist. And the Timberwolves, both in the minutes following the ejection and in the fourth quarter, spammed attacks in the paint, knowing Wembanyama would not be there to protect the rim. Simply put, Wemby's ejection made the prospect of the Spurs' victory far more challenging. Everybody knows the rim's going to be a lot more open when he's not on the floor. Timberwolves guard Anthony Edwards told reporters after the game, yeah, he's 8 feet tall, so he's going to cover up the rim anytime he's on the floor. When reviewing possible suspensions, the league looks at several factors, including a player's history. Since this was his first flagrant 2 and first ejection, the NBA might opt to let the time missed in Game 4 stand. The league can also fine him. Johnson, who obviously has an agenda to push in this case, said it would be ridiculous if he were suspended. Either way, the Spurs should prepare for the possibility, and beyond that, they should continue to expect teams to provoke him like this, simply because San Antonio is easier to beat when he's not on the floor.
From 1 million NIL deals to seeking missing title, this is a last pitch. It is Najari Kennedy, 2026. Najari Kennedy's college softball career is almost over. When Texas Tech's run in the NCAA tournament ends, and Red Raider fans hope that that's them lifting the national championship trophy in Oklahoma City, Kennedy will not only be remembered as one of the sport's greatest pitchers and a transformative player for Texas Tech, but also as a trailblazer in bringing money into softball. Through name, image, and likeness, that's NIL earnings, Kennedy has been the sport's highest paid player for the last 2 years, earning north of $1 million a season. The investment has been worth it for Texas Tech. A year ago, Kennedy powered the Red Rangers to their first Big 12 championship and a trip to the Women's College World Series. Her list of accolades includes multiple Pitcher and National Player of the Year awards from D1Softball.com, NFCA, Softball America, USA Softball, Big 12, and Pac-12. Kennedy said she's finally feeling comfortable with being the face of softball NIL. Texas Tech is widely considered to be a contender for the World Series in Oklahoma City. The Red Raiders earned the 11th seed in the 64-team bracket and will host the Lubbock Regional beginning May 15th. Tech's first game will be against Marist, 4:30 on ESPN+. Kennedy is spreading the word about her ongoing NIL partnerships with Venmo and how it's helped her handle all these dollars that she earned. I feel like college athletes are managing larger and larger lines of money, which is amazing, but there's also a lot of responsibility that comes with that, she has said. The professional ranks are just around the corner now for Kennedy. Last week, she was selected second overall in the Athletes Unlimited Softball League draft by the Texas Talons. ESPN platforms will broadcast more than 50 AUSL games this season. CBS Sports Networks will air 20, and MLB Network will carry 11. It's the first season in which the fledgling softball league will have teams based in cities rather than just touring across the country. Kennedy entered her regular season ranking 6th nationally in ERA, 4th in hits allowed per 7 innings, and 10th in total strikeouts. Texas Tech is 52-6 this season, but it failed to capture a second consecutive Big 12 title. The Red Raiders fell on May 9th in the conference championship game to Arizona State. Now, all that's left for Kennedy is to cap off a remarkable collegiate career is to win a national championship. She's been to the Women's College World Series 3 times, twice with Stanford and once with Tech, but she hasn't raised the trophy in the final game. To do that this season would be especially meaningful for not just Kennedy, but for all her fans at Texas Tech too. It would be amazing, not only just for the team, but I feel like for the Lubbock community and the Texas Tech community. I feel like those fans are excited, and just being able to play for them and win for them and get a national championship for them, well, that would be awesome.
A rookie is on pace for a home run mark after the first quarter. It's believing season in Major League Baseball. This past weekend, all but one team passed the 40-game mark, a very unofficial but nonetheless meaningful checkpoint that signals the season is already one quarter complete. It's officially okay to start buying what you're seeing. Okay, that's not a hard and fast rule. This is a column by Gabe Lacris. Fans can believe the New York Mets won't lose 99 games, and Fernando Tatis Jr. won't finish with 0 home runs, and they'll probably be correct. But for many trends, the cement has set, even if it's not totally dry. With that, we'll take a look at 6 paces that are defining the season, and would certainly look startling come the end of September. 61 home runs for Munetaka Murakami. Okay? This one might be a touch tough to maintain. That doesn't diminish what the 213-pound Murakami has done in his first season in the world's Premier League. Sure, the worrywarts were right. Murakami is striking out 34% of the time. His 55 punch-outs lead the American League. His whopping 44% whiff rate is near the very bottom of the majors. Yet he's clearly running into enough balls, and is expected to slug 568 the expected slug practically mirrors reality, which is 565. Additionally, his 369 on-base percentage was only slightly dented by the move to Major League Baseball, as he posted a 379 on-base percentage last full season in Japan. An elite 22% chase rate certainly helps that, allowing him 3 shots to unleash his A swing against pitches in the zone. His 2-year, $34 million is possibly the White Sox finest free agent investment ever. In concert with slugging middle infielder Colson Montgomery and emerging ace Davis Martin, Murakami has helped the 19-10 Sox push memories of 121 losses seem much longer than 2 years ago. 110. That's the number of wins for the Cubs, Braves, and Yankees. Okay, so these teams probably won't maintain their .684 winning percentage, right? Well, you probably didn't figure the Cubs would win at least 15 games in a row at Wrigley Field either. Heck, a streak that long hasn't happened since 1935. But Chicago is now a stunning 18-5 at the friendly confines after a raucous 4-game sweep of the Reds, who went from second to last place in a hurry. Now, however, the Cubs will have to carry on without lefty Matthew Boyd, who tore a meniscus in his knee. Then again, they lost ace Cade Horton for the season, and lefty Justin Steele suffered a setback on the rehab trail. And still, the club entered the weekend 26-12, tied with Atlanta and the Yankees for the best record in baseball. Once again, Shota Imanaga is off to a fantastic start with 11 and 10 strikeout games already. And yet April and May are by far the best 2 months of his career. Put it this way, if he can sustain, the Cubs may just run off with their first full season division title since 2017. 500, the winning percentage for the AL East, American East Central West champions. We have at least a remote shot at baseball history, the first time a team won a division without a winning record. Folks might remember 1994 for the lost World Series, with the historic statistical seasons washed away. Perhaps the real tragedy was sweating whether the Texas Rangers, in the end 52 and 62 in the end in first place when the plug was pulled, could win the American League West with a .456 winning percentage. In subsequent seasons, the 2005 San Diego Padres and the 2007 St. Louis Cardinals captured ignominious championships in the 16 format, with the Cards Jeff Weavering their way to World Series title. Now we have perhaps the most parity-laden year in recent memory, with 18 of the 30 teams within 3 games of the 500 mark. The flat distribution of wins is most pronounced in the American League Central in the West, with Cleveland and the Athletics leading their divisions at 20 and 19 and 19 and 18 respectively. What gives? We're firmly out of the tanking area. Teams like Chicago White Sox and Colorado Rockies have cleaned up their acts and exited their historically awful periods. And even clubs trying not to win, hello St. Louis, are finding surprise success. Actually, the schedule, which seems to get weirder every year, has kept many division combatants away from each other. 4 American League Central teams have set 6 or 7 games against division foes, while the Tigers have already played 21 interleague games. Separation may occur once the division games pile up, but then again, there's no obvious punching bag anywhere in the majors, with only the Rockies and San Francisco Giants barely on track for 100 losses. 1.214 that's the OPS for Ben Rice. Jordan Alvarez in the convention in the conversation as the greatest hitter of his era is having arguably the finest season of his year. Yet Alvarez and Aaron Judge and Matt Olson and resurgent Mike Trout are all looking up as a part-time catcher drafted in the 12th round by the New York Yankees. Ben Rice is not just off to a powerful start, as his Major League best OPS suggests. He's nearly in the Triple Crown conversation at the moment, leading the American League with a .343 average, second with 27 RBIs and 12 homers, trailing only Judge and Murakami. This thing is real. Rice ranks in at least the 97th percentile in half a dozen measurables, and his batting average on balls in play is a normal .269. Sustainable? Well, Rice is currently day-to-day with bone bruise in his hand, slowing his roll just a bit, but plenty is already in the bank for him and the Yankees. Now 26-12 after largely bringing back last year's roster. Projecting another big step forward for the 27-year-old Rice was clearly a prudent part of their grand plan. 3.61 walks per game. Weird one, we know, yet no stat probably has better exemplifies the effect the automated ball strike system has had on the game. That walk rate per team is the highest since the 3.75 mark in 20,000. Year 2000, right in the teeth of the steroid era, and the third highest since 1956. And why is that? Well, the automated ball strike sound system has empowered batters to be more selective around borderline calls and provided a real-time check on umpires who might be inclined to give the pitchers an edge. Straight? In short, the strike zone is smaller. Has that made it easier to hit? Alas, not really. The league-wide 242 batting average is the worst since the mound was lowered after the 1968 season, when hitter-friendly rules, a shift ban, bigger bases were enacted, and the league batted at a collective 248. So is life getting easier for pitchers? Complete games. Yeah, that's the pace. For the entire league, it's not a misprint. Only 8 complete games this year. So far, only Miami's Sandy Alcantara and Satellite's George Kirby have managed to go the distance. Kirby's the 8-inning variety in a losing effort. Well, that seems like nothing new. Nobody faces the order 3 times through. Velocity and relievers are king. This drop in complete is precipitous.
And you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on our Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our time is 1:15. We're still in sports. We're going to talk the NASCAR Cup Series. The SVG ends Watkins race with a crazy drive. Shane Van Gisbergen knows he owns these road course races. He's been nearly untouchable for the rest of NASCAR Cup Series, but he insists that he had to work for it at the Watkins Glen International back on May 10th. Oh, for sure, but it's not easy, SVG said. Everyone's really good. Yes, Van Gisbergen secured his first win of the 26th season in the Go Bowling at the Glen. It was his 6th victory in the last 7 tries on road courses. But with 24 laps to go, he pitted from the lead and re-emerged in 24th. Still, he weaved his way through the 38-car field in 16 laps, retaking the top spot and eventually crossing the finish line 7 seconds in front of the runner-up, who was Michael McDowell. Ty Gibbs placed 3rd. There was a lot of pressure there, and I think McDowell was good, Van Gisbergen said. And Connor was good. Tyler Reddick. There were some really good guys and a lot of pressure. Just stoked for these guys to execute every facet of our game. SVG, he turned 37 years old on May 9th, and then he gave himself a birthday gift that afternoon by securing the pole position during qualifying. He unboxed another present with his win. He claimed stage 2 and fronted the pack for 74 of the 100 laps. Gibbs led the second most laps with only 17. Gibbs said that the driver Van Gisbergen overtook for the Gibbs was the driver that Van Gisbergen overtook for the final lead change. Thank you to Trackhouse, he said. We weren't very good in practice, and then qualifying was amazing. Good tweaks. Then today, what a race car. They made great calls. I wasn't sure how it was going to work, and then to run them down like that, it was very, very special. With the 7th victory of his Cup Series career, Van Gisbergen tied Chase Elliott as the circuit's winningest active driver on the road. He also holds the record for wins by a driver born outside of the U.S. McDowell is no slouch on the road courses either. That 41-year-old slotted as the runner-up for his first top 3 finish since snatching 2nd back at Sonoma in June 24. He led 5 laps. It marked his second top 5 of the campaign, with his first occurring at COTA in March. In 8 races between then and Watkins Glen, McDowell cracked the top 20 only twice and hadn't done so in 5 weeks. It's been a rough few weeks, he said, but that's what is great about NASCAR. You're only 1 week away from grabbing a top 5 finish and having some momentum on our side. We knew this was a track we could come to, and if we executed like we did today, we could contend for the win. We still needed a little bit more to hang in there with Shane Van Gisbergen there, but all in all, the number 71 Go Bowling Chevrolet team, it had a good day. The Spire Motorsports driver carries 2 career victories, one at Daytona back in 21 and another on the Indy Road Course in 2023.
Gino Thiticol earns her second 2026 LPGA title. Gino Thiticol is back. After Nelly Corda looked poised to put together another dominant season, Thiticol said, "Not so fast." At least her clubs did anyway, as she collected her 9th career LPGA title and 2nd this year at the Mizuho Americas Open. It's Thiticol's 2nd consecutive win at the Mizuho, although she accomplished the feat on a different course, winning at the Testy Mountain Ridge Country Club in West Caldwell, New Jersey. After a season in which there were no repeat winners on the LPGA until October, Thiticol becomes the 4th player this season to win twice, joining Hyo Kim, Hannah Green, and Corda. In February, Thiticol won for the first time on home soil at the Honda LPGA Thailand. After the win in Thailand, Thiticol started to feel off with her irons, calling on her longtime swing coach to help her get sorted. His message? Try less. I just give him credit that sometimes you don't try to fix things to be perfect, Thiticol says Thitikul, who drained a long birdie putt on the difficult 18th to win by 4 over good friend Ruoning Yin, who noted in a hilarious post-round interview on CBS that Thitikul gave her SHIT last year for not being there when she won. This time, Yin was front and center with a champagne. I think this will be my 5th runner-up in 19 months, so I don't know. I think it's coming, said Yin, who hit 18 greens in the final round. Thitikul and Yin teamed up to win the Dow Championships 2 years ago, but this week found themselves battling against each other. Thitikul was asked after the round how the confidence would help in the coming weeks with the U.S. Women's Open at the Riviera around the corner. She has yet to win a major championship. I mean, like it's always my dream, said Thitikul. I would not say goal, but the dream to be able to win a major. As I said, I don't want to put anything on my shoulder right now. I just took it all out. I just play golf. Whether I win a major or not, I think I have done enough.
And now let's talk the NBA draft lottery. Here's the winners and losers. The Wizards nailed down one while the Pacers lost out. It's fitting that the NBA draft lottery coincides with spring. It's the chance for some of the most disadvantaged teams in the league to have their fortunes revived through the draft. And this year is particularly noteworthy for a few reasons. So here are our winners and losers from the draft lottery. First, we're going to have some winners, the Bulls. No team saw a bigger jump in the lottery than the Bulls, who entered with the 9th best odds to sneak into the top 4, and the Bulls did just that, leaping up to number 4. The next winner, John Wall, delivers for the Wizards. Wall, the last player Washington selected number 1 overall, had represented the Wizards in the 2011 lottery, a year when Washington fell to number 6 and drafted Jan Vesely. This time, Wall came through. Next winner is the Jazz are about to turn the corner. Let's give Danny Ainge some credit after he got a dose of good luck. The Jazz fully embraced the tank, pulling their starters in the fourth quarters of the games, and now they'll hold the number 2 overall pick. Still on winners, the Grizzlies may find their Ja Morant replacement. Jumping up 3 spots from the number 6 to the number 3, it could put the Grizzlies in an excellent spot to feel comfortable moving on from Ja Morant, whom the team reportedly made available in trade talks before the February deadline. Winners still, Clippers rebuild on the fly. At Los Angeles, even after it turned its season around, probably wasn't going to compete this season in the Western Conference. So the Clippers shrewdly, and with a bit of luck, essentially turned Ivica Zubac into the 26th number 5 selection, a 2029 unprotected first, and Benedict Mathurin, who showed immense promise as scorer off the bench. Now we have the Pelicans can catch a break. It's not that they won the lottery or even moved up. The Pelicans are winners here because their selection moved down. Now we're going to go on to the losers. Pacers and trade for Ivica Zubac. They entered the draft with a 14% chance to claim the number 1 overall selection and a 52.1% chance to land a top 4 pick, tied for the highest among all teams. Yet, the Pacers landed in the worst possible place. They sent their first-round selection to the Clippers in the trade that landed center Ivica Zubac. That pick, however, was protected for picks number 1 through 4 and 10 through 30. That means that if the pick fell anywhere between the 5 and 9 range, well, it would go to Los Angeles. And finally, on losers, we have the Nets. A fall of 3 spots might not initially appear to be so terrible, but in this draft, it likely means the difference between a great player and a generational one. The Nets had the 3rd worst record in the NBA and are a very young team and one that made first-round selections last season. Assuming most pre-draft projections hold true, the 3rd pick could have netted Brooklyn someone like Caleb Wilson, the North Carolina star who's climbing up the draft boards because of his size and skill and athleticism. The Nets should still secure a very good player at number 6, but the lottery wasn't kind to a team that has won just 46 games over the last 2 seasons.
In golf news, Rayton makes the most of the truest chance. Chris Rayton has had to question whether he was going to get into the last 2 PGA Tour signature events. He no longer has to wonder. The 28-year-old won the Truist Championship on May 10th, his first PGA Tour victory in his 15th start. He's the second player from Norway, the first was Victor Hovland, to win on the tour, and did so shooting a 2 under 69 in the final round at the Quail Hollow Club in Charlotte, North Carolina, to beat Ricky Fowler and Nikolai Højgaard by 2 shots. "I don't have any words, to be honest," he told CBS Amanda Balonis after the winning putt dropped. "This is way more than I expected, and for it to happen this quickly is just unreal. Yeah, a dream come true." After a tie for second at the Zurich Classic at the New Orleans 2 weeks ago, Rayton was at home last week expecting a week off. But after a withdrawal ahead of the Cadillac Championship, he moved up to the first alternate and found himself in the field after Jake Knapp withdrew. He contended and ultimately finished 14th, doubling his last hole. He thought that took him out of the truest field. Little did he know it helped him get in. Alex Smalley jumped Rayton and moved into the Aon Swing 10, putting him in the field, while Rayton then earned his spot in the field via the Aon Swing 5. For me, it doesn't make sense, because I shouldn't be rewarded for having a bad hole. But I'll take it. I'll take a coincidence like that, said Rayton on May 9th. He started the final round 1 shot behind Alex Fitzpatrick, who with his brother Matt defeated Rayton at the Zurich Classic during his PGA Tour card. And even last week, like Rayton, Fitzpatrick had some strong moments before tied for 9th finish at Cadillac. The duo played junior golf in Europe and found themselves together in the final pair in the truest final round, though Fitzpatrick struggled out of the gate. He was 3 over after 3 holes and had battled back to be a shot behind Rayton with 2 holes to play, but a double bogey on the par 3 13 took him out of contention. "I'm disappointed not to have won, but I'm also really proud of myself for how I battled out there," Fitzpatrick said. "I was 3 over through 3, and then in my head I'm thinking, I could shoot an 81 here." I felt like I was super happy that I was very patient. Rayton, meanwhile, went out an even par with a pair of birdies and bogeys. He took control with a pair of birdies on the 14th and 15th to take the outright lead, and then he conquered the Green Mile. Other PGA Tour players have their first career win at the Truist, formerly Wells Fargo, include Rory McIlroy, Ricky Fowler, and Max Homa. And here's another golf story. The 26th President's Cup captain snaps her 8-year winless streak. It's been nearly 8 years, but Brandt Snedeker is a winner again. Snedeker shot a final round 566 on May 10th at the One Flight Myrtle Beach Classic to come from down 3 shots down at the start of the day to win his 10th title on the PGA Tour. Snedeker, the 2026 President's Cup captain, did what 2025 Ryder Cup captain Keegan Bradley did, win on the tour ahead of leading Team USA in an international competition. While Snedeker is probably still not in any conversation to play for the Red, White, and Blue this September, he can call himself a winner again. Snedeker's last win came in 2018 at the Wyndham Championship. He earned more that day, $1,080,000 he did May 10th at the Dunes Golf Beach Club. With the One Flight being a PGA Tour opposite field event, he'll take home only $720,000. But that's merely a footnote for the 45-year-old who contended earlier this year at the Valspar Championship, but ended up tied for 18th after a final round 76. This time, Snedeker was stellar in the final round with that 66 and his second 66 of the week. His 2 other scores were in the 67s as he finished at 18 under to edge Mark Hubbard by a shot. It's been a roller coaster. I feel amazing. I feel so lucky to still be out here, still doing what I love to do. I have a chance to win a golf tournament at my age, and to be able to pull it out is something super special. I'm just so pumped. I don't know what else to say. I had a lot going with this year, obviously with the President's Cup stuff, getting to be around the guys. It really did push me a lot. It did. Seeing Gary Woodland win a few weeks ago in the Houston, seeing the old guys play well and the young guys push them, it's fun to get back into the swing of things and play some good golf. And while it's been a while for him to hoist a trophy, Snedeker insists his game hasn't been that far off. I know people don't think I've been playing that great, but I've been playing pretty good. Just kind of not having been able to put 4 rounds together. And this week, I did. He said, so excited for what the next little bit holds. I'm going to really enjoy tonight and celebrate this. 10 wins out here is an accomplishment for me. I'm super excited about it. Snedeker's win had one other perk. It earned him a spot at the 2026 PGA Championship, which starts this week on May 14th. Hubbard made bogey on 16th and 18th to shoot 70. He was in the final group and contended all day, but came up short. It's always one of those those with golf, like what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Was my attitude good because I had unbelievable ball control for most part of the week, or I had ball control because my attitude was good? We'll see, he said. Right now, I feel a lot better than I would have in the past situations. And just overall throughout the week, I had a lot more fun out there. I just felt a lot more calm and less stressed, and that was really nice. I'd like to continue feeling that throughout the rest of the year.
And you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on our Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our time is now currently 1:30, and I'm going to take you right over to our lifestyle section. First, we're going to talk a streaming article. Martin Short goes beyond laughs to talk about life, love, and loss. On screen, Martin Short's zany characters, like enthusiastic Ed Grimley, tactless Jiminy Glick, and exuberant Frank Egelhofer in Father of the Bride among them, have made audiences cackle for decades. But off camera, life hasn't always been a stream of laughs. As Netflix's documentary that's called Marty, Life is Short shows, the funny man has suffered harrowing tragedies. He has a history of terrible loss, but he has an attitude that's very positive, says director Lawrence Kasdan, an Oscar-nominated filmmaker and he's Short's longtime friend. At the age of 20, Short had already suffered the loss of his older brother and his parents. Then in 2010, his wife of 30 years, Nancy Dolman, died of ovarian cancer at age 58. In February, Short mourned the death of their daughter, Catherine Short, who died by suicide at age of 42. Here's what you should know about this viewing, Marty, Life is Short. A private short lets the viewers in. Kasdan says the idea for a documentary, it came to him while working on a 2022 docuseries about visual effects called Light and Magic. When Kasdan pitched the film to Short, he was a little hesitant at first because he just didn't want it to be another one of those documentaries, the director says, and he's a private person. But then he came around. Short has seen the film several times, Kasdan said, and he likes it. Marty, Life is Short is dedicated to O'Hara and Catherine Short. Kasdan and his teams of filmmakers decided to dedicate the documentary to the memories of Catherine O'Hara and Catherine Short. A picture of the two of them is included at the end of the movie. Kasdan says he was very close to both. He directed O'Hara and Wyatt Earp and collaborated with her husband, production designer Bo Welch, on The Accidental Tourist and The Grand Canyon. And Catherine Short, I've known since she was a little girl, he says. I just feel total affection and sadness at her loss. Short fell in love with the drop-dead beautiful Nancy. Nancy was drop-dead beautiful, Short says in the documentary, but he didn't pay too much attention to the men gawking at her all the time because he was in an on-again, off-again relationship with Gilda Radner. One summer when he and Dolman were both single, when she came to see him in a play, they stopped in at a Four Seasons hotel where Short delivered a wisecrack to a member of the staff. My wife and I would like a room, please, and even he started laughing because we looked like we were about 12, he says. That was it. They wed in 1980, but they had trouble conceiving because of Dolman's endometriosis. We were just stunned, he says, when they couldn't get pregnant. They turned to fertility drugs that affected her mood. She once got mad at Short for not cleaning the counter after he made his sandwich, and I said, okay, you have to stop taking these drugs. We're going to adopt a baby. So we adopted Catherine, and then Oliver, and then Henry. O'Hara praises Short and Dolman as an amazing team. Bill Murray's success affected Short's move to comedy. Short decided against auditioning for the Second City, Toronto, when it opened in '73 because he didn't like the idea of trying to be funny on demand, he says, because I was basically afraid of it. I wanted to be Sinatra, a singer. But Short felt stuck professionally when he moved to L.A. with Dolman when she landed a recording contract. Then in 1977, Short and Dolman were walking to dinner with Paul Schaefer and Bill Murray. Short became overwhelmed with, I can't do it, he says. Short told Dolman, I can't go and pretend to be happy for Bill because I don't know what I'm doing. But the next morning, Short woke up in a funk, and seeing the improv group War Babies, it provided clarity. It was like light bulbs going off. Of course this is what I should be doing, he said, and he joined Second City, Toronto. Short has learned loss is something to negotiate. Short's brother David died in a car accident in 1962 when the comedian was just 12. After it was After, it was like nothing made sense, he said, and then I had a dream, and I'm telling you, I can see it right now. I was sitting by a stream in the woods, and David came up, looked handsome. He was wearing this beautiful Banlon shirt, and he said, I'm fine, everything is wonderful, I'll see you in a minute. And I woke up, and that cloud had lifted. But the tragedy struck the family again when Short's mom, Olive, started to cough at David's funeral. She had previously battled breast cancer quietly, but this time it was predicted she'd only have 3 months left to live. She refused to accept that and said, I have another child to raise. Olive was in perfect health then for the next 2 years, but died when he was 18. His father's health declined quickly after that, too, and Charles Short died just when his son was 20. Dolman was diagnosed with ovarian cancer in 2007 and died in 2010. Like any family, it's just simple fact that loss is something to negotiate, Short says. It's going to happen to all of us, and we must celebrate and continue that voice and just never let it go.
Cedric hosts a neighborhood block party. Cedric the Entertainer obviously did not want the show The Neighborhood to end on CBS after 8 seasons. But executive producer and star Cedric, who's 62 years old, can still smile about the blowout rap party in February after shooting the series finale, Welcome to Goodbye. It was a blast. There were cast and crew who've been with the show forever, and people whose storylines ended on season 1 showing up back up. Cedric tells us, USA Today, of his final episode as Calvin Butler, the community-minded central neighborhood character who doesn't wear his emotions on his sleeve. There was a blooper reel, and it got a lot of time recalling the laughs we had on and off camera. By the end of the night, I wasn't crying. I just had allergies. Okay, maybe there were some happy tears, but truthfully, there haven't been traumatic walls around the endings of The Neighborhood, the comedy created by Jim Reynolds. It delivered laughs and solid ratings for a good run with the original Kings of Comedies star Cedric, whose real name is Cedric Antonio Kyles, at the helm. Of course, this is the kind of show you wish you could do forever, or at least have leave a Law and Order type run, Cedric says, referencing the long-running NBC procedural franchise. But 8 seasons is a long time, and we feel blessed. According to that feeling is the sense of series completion. In the wake of the CBS merger with Paramount Skydance, The Neighborhood was given a final season on March 8, 2025, allowing the opportunity to complete its story on its own terms. The Pasadena set comedy follows Calvin and the Butler family, whose lives are forever changed when a white Midwestern family, the Johnsons, moved next door into a predominantly black neighborhood. The great thing about it is we are able to leave the story on our own terms, Cedric says. Maybe many shows don't get that. They just find out they're not coming back, and it's like, whoa. So what happens in The Neighborhood series finale? The series finale wraps up several long-running neighborhood storylines, including the marriages of Calvin's grown sons, Malcolm, played by McKinney, and Maddie, played by Marcel Spears, the pregnancies of their respective spouses, and the Johnsons' poignant departure as the family returns to the Midwest. We wanted to show that life just keeps moving forward and changes for the Butlers, Cedric says. Happy things come to the family, but things go away too. The Neighborhood franchise will exit as well. Planned spin-offs have not taken off. One planned series centered on sons Malcolm and Marty moving to the new neighborhood, which was not picked up by CBS for 2025-26 season. We tried, Cedric says. None of the sequels was able to go forward. Cedric stars in Netflix's Swapped, writes Gurling Bible. Cedric, however, has no plans to slow down, already moving forward with a surge of post-neighborhood projects. The actor stars in animated Netflix Swapped, voicing Kalu, the father of the woodland creature, Ollie. Michael was in his Oscar run at the time. Cedric says he'd be leaving the Sound City as I was coming in, and we'd pound fists. The grill pro just unleashed his Bible cookbook, AC Barbecue, the husky handsome guide to grilling. Of course, there are multiple references to grilling in the neighborhood finale, which features a front yardicue for wedding guests.
And now we're going to talk books. Cornwall plumbs her past for the true crime. Patricia Cornwell has spent much of her career in the morgue. She has traipsed through body farms of decomposing corpses. She tattooed a turkey from the grocery store to see how it would fade post-mortem. The author of the Kay Scarpetta novels is known for embedding herself in forensics for research, but this time she's giving her own life an autopsy. So, in true crime fashion, Cornwall runs towards fear. Cornwall's mother suffered from psychotic depressive episodes that sent her to a psychiatric facility, while Cornwall and her brothers lived with an abusive foster family. From a young age, Cornwall learned that from her mother that the world was unsafe. She was always anticipating what might injure or kill us. Life would confirm this on many occasions for Cornwall. She reveals that she was molested at age 5 and raped and drugged by a police officer in early adulthood. She writes that TV and radio host Larry King forced her hand onto his crotch during a flight. Writing is cathartic for Cornwall, who prefers to run headfirst into what scares her. She's afraid of sharks, she says, so naturally she reads every article about sharks. She ruminates on the danger lurking around her, scaffolding like could fall, elevators that could slice. Cornwall takes a scalpel to abuse and eating disorders. Cornwall's childhood memories are uncharacteristically detailed, but it's not her fictional flair coming into play here. Much of true crime comes from a manuscript Cornwall wrote at the age of 19, a thinly veiled autobiography about her eating disorder. She turned in the 300 or so pages as her college thesis and put it in a box, never resurfaced it until now. When she reread it back in her 60s, she scrapped the language but took those vivid memories. I couldn't have written this book today without Patsy Daniels, that's her maiden name, from long ago, and her work never would have seen the light of day had Patricia Cornwall not come along, Cornwall says. That's been the best part of this, I feel, like I went back and rescued my child. A childhood in limbo also comes painfully into focus here. Cornwall brings readers into her parents' fraught relationship. The two of them virtually destroyed each other, she says, and her mother's mental health struggles in one instance before her mother was hospitalized. She gathered up all the children's clothing and possessions and she threw them into a fire. Cornwall is a private person. She has dealt with stalkers. Putting her personal life under a microscope felt unnerving, and it's important that you do what you need to do, even if it scares you a little, she says. Looking back on Scarpetta amid the new Nicole Kidman series, Scarpetta fans will revel in a trip down memory lane in true crime. The book finally found the silver screen with Nicole Kidman at the helm when Scarpetta premiered this year, but it wasn't easy to get there. Cornwall reminisces about the Kay Scarpetta would-bes that include Susan Sarandon, Jodie Foster, Demi Moore. Cornwall has some regrets about Moore. Moore threw herself into preparation to play Scarpetta, but then the adaptation fell through. Around the same time, Cornwall was charged with a DUI after she flipped her car on the highway. She canceled her research visit to the FBI Academy with Moore. I said I needed to figure out why I wasn't dead, she writes. The last thing on my mind then was that movie. It wasn't until she befriended Jamie Lee Curtis that an adaptation moved past the writing stage. Curtis wanted Kidman for that part. I thought that would be wonderful, but I also really truly didn't believe it, she said. I kept waiting for the plug to get pulled until they actually started filming. I didn't believe it was going to happen. Cornwall praises Amazon Prime for being a book-centric studio that stays faithful to books as Scarpetta. And Kidman has been immersing herself in the forensic world, Cornwall says. Welcome to my scary world because it's not for the faint of heart. It's not an easy role. And like I've said, whoever was going to do this had to deal with 36 years of fans. And that's a very, very tall order. But she has done it. With Scarpetta in full focus, it's hard to imagine there was a time when Cornwall thought she'd have to hang up her bestseller. After the 2016 book that was called Chaos, she took a 5-year hiatus. During that pandemic, Cornwall was struck with inspiration. She tried to coax her protagonist out from hiding. I'm wondering if you'd like to work on a case together again, I ventured. Well, it depends on what it is, Scarpetta answered, implying that had better be a good one, she writes. Autopsy was then published in 2021. Cornwall had been on a clean book-a-year schedule since. If she does retire Scarpetta, she'll take a big swing. Cornwall has always wanted to fly a rocket for research. Scarpetta could get into some good investigating on the moon. She will, Cornwall says. Someone's going to die up there. They are going to need people.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 1:43. And here's an article about music. Groban reels in the classics for cinematic. Josh Groban's Setney baritone has quoted classical pop, Italian standards, Broadway boomers, and holiday sing-alongs. On Cinematic, out now, Groban sinks into movie classics, another genre well suited to his robust vocals. From Adele's Oscar-winning James Bond-themed Skyfall to timeless Disney sentiments When You Wish Upon a Star, to forceful drama Brucia La Terra from The Godfather, Groban exercises every facet of his chameleon instrument. His 10th album is also peppered with guests, including upcoming tour partner Jennifer Hudson on a duet arrangement of Unchained Melody, the Gay Men's Chorus of Los Angeles augmenting Can You Feel Love Tonight, and most special to Groban, his father, Jack, playing trumpet on the eternally swoony Moon River. Calling recently from Los Angeles, and just before announcing his engagement to Natalie McQueen and receiving a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, the always affable Josh Groban, who's 45 years old, chatted about recording with his dad in the Louis Armstrong studio, his appreciation of Phil Collins in paying tribute to Rob Reiner in song. Question: you had infinite choices with this album. How did you whittle it down to 10 songs? The answer: I knew what my bookends were as time goes by, would open the album, because orchestrator Jeff Atmanagian wrote an opening arrangement that captured the essence of what I wanted people to hear first. And then to end with a song that has meant so much to me, Stand By Me, including a tribute to Rob Reiner. Question: you said the why was a big factor in choosing these songs. Why that particular Rob movie? Obviously, tragically, the why became very apparent. We missed the recording deadline because it was the last-minute decision to do Stand By Me, and that worked in its favor because it was intimate, and that was exactly how we wanted it. It was one of the most important things I've ever recorded. It deserved to be a final thought. Question: did you rewatch some of these movies before recording? He laughs. Yes, I did. Not just to get back in the mood, but just to educate myself about some of the films that I admittedly didn't know the songs were from. The cool thing about an album like this is everyone knows the theme from the movie, but it also pays tribute to the songs that were maybe far more popular than the movies themselves. Question: you mean like Against All Odds by Phil Collins have written some timeless songs, even though he often gets a bad rap? Answer: I think Phil Collins has written some of the most brilliant songs, period. But something unlocks in him when writing in service of a film, and that's not uncommon. Question: your dad, Jack Groban, also appears on the album. Is this the first time you've recorded together? Answer: this is the first time he's been on record, period. He did a version of Old Devil Moon with me in 2015 during a show in Los Angeles, and it was my favorite moments on stage ever. I have a photo from it, but no recording. I knew he could play, and when conductor-arranger Vince Mendoza wrote this brilliant rendition of Moon River, I asked my dad if he thought he could handle the arrangement. He practiced at home, and then I'd come to the house and listen to him play it. He's going to be 80 this summer. He really crushed it. Album producer Greg Wells took the initiative to get Sunset Sound, Louis Armstrong's favorite studio and room, and got a stool for my dad to sit on. My whole family came to watch. It was a core memory for all of us. Question: do you think your dad was nervous? My dad is the coolest guy I know. On surface, he doesn't get thrown. This meant so much to him too, and for us to share as father and son. He sacrificed so much. He was a musician. He was brilliant at the trumpet, but it was a time when deciding to go all in on an artistic dream was at odds with the family. So my brother and I could stand on the back of that stability to follow our artistic dream. Question: why was it important for you to feature the Gay Men's Chorus of Los Angeles on Can You Feel Love Tonight? Answer: when we were trying to figure out what songs would be relevant today, that song is so iconic, and Elton John is so iconic, and I grew up listening to that song. Of course, I thought, what do I have to add to this? We were listening to Elton's version and reading the lyrics and doom-scrolling about the fear in the world and division, and where's the feeling of love? So we thought, what if we view the approach as an anthem to discovering that feeling, and they give that love to communities that really need it? Question: have you ever performed with them before? Answer: I sang with the Gay Men's Choir for Barack Obama's first inauguration, and I remember the power of their voices. but also representing an allyship with the community that needs to feel the love was an inspiration. I was honored, and they said yes. Question: you and Jennifer Hudson made a swoony pair on Unchained Melody. Do you have plans to do anything together on your upcoming tour? Answer: yeah, we're definitely going to sing it together during the show. Her voice is such an extraordinary instrument. We sang together for the first time on a holiday special in 2024. We did Oh Holy Night, and when our voices came together in that final Noel, we looked at each other like, we have to do this again. Question: you're also heading back to Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas in October with your GEMS residency. Will these shows be different from the tour? Answer: the tour we created for Vegas took time to craft, so we want to have a show that represents what we can do only for Vegas. But every time I come back, I want there to be enough changes to whatever I'm doing in the moment. So cinematic will be represented.
And now we're still going to talk music. Singer Mika stays in motion and on mission. Platinum-selling singer-songwriter Mika reveals exclusively to our USA Today that he plans to mark the 20th anniversary of his debut album that was called Life in Cartoon Motion, released back in 2007, with the catchy single Grace Kelly. We're doing something quite glorious, the singer, who's 42, says. I can't say too much about it now, but it's going to go around the world. Mika, who was born Michael Penniman Jr., says that when he created that LP, he was looking for freedom. The artist was born in Lebanon, but conflict in the country forced his family to Paris. At age of 7, Mika's father was on a business trip to Kuwait and effectively taken hostage in the American embassy during the Gulf War. He was able to return to his family after 8 months, but Mika reflects that his father came back a different person. Our life fell apart in Paris, he says. He remembers his family piling into a Toyota Previa, the most wonderful, ugliest car ever made, and moving to London after the ordeal. I got kicked out of school, and then that's when I started doing music. I was looking for a way of finding color, finding love, finding joy, putting it into my life, and then making sure that it would be part of my daily life, Mika says of his debut album, released when he was only 23. That's why I wrote that first album. It's as simple and as complicated as that. Mika comments on TikTok, Grace Kelly Duet Challenge. Mika's breakout single that was called Grace Kelly, it recently had a moment on TikTok as fans and celebs took part in the Grace Kelly Duet Challenge by singing different parts of the song together. Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell even got into the action. Mika calls the trend fun, and he says it makes him giggle. But when it comes to TikTok, he has a hot take that isn't related to any musical trend. Everyone who's 35 and upwards gets on TikTok and then ends up spending money and buying stuff, he says. They're all embarrassed, but it's true. Mika's online shopping habits are not exclusive to TikTok either. When I found myself the other day actually considering to do a quick purchase buy of perfume that I had not even smelled, but it looked really intriguing on Instagram, I said, that's it. I've hit rock bottom, he just joked. At least he has his job to keep him busy and maybe keep him from another nice raincoat. Mika is now traveling the United States on the Spinning Out Tour in support of his album called Hyperlove. Now that's his 7th LP and the first all-English album since the year of 2019. It's taken quite a few years to get back to the States just because of life and chaos, but the audience so far has been remarkable. Staying weird and defending weird, experimental pop with the most amount of fearless joy possible is not just a kind of manifesto, but it's a mission.
Here's the Lifeline column. Making Waves by Elizabeth Smart. Quote, she could absolutely still be alive. There are cases that span many more years than mine does, and they came back alive, and we're talking years and years. That was a quote by Elizabeth Smart while speaking on the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, the 84-year-old mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie, during a recent CNN interview. The comments from Smart, who spent 9 harrowing months in captivity after her 2002 abduction, came as May 12th marks 100 days since Guthrie apparently was abducted from her Tucson, Arizona home in the middle of the night. It's your birthday. Who's celebrating today? Singer-musician Steve Winwood turned 78. Singer-musician Billy Squier is 76. Actor Gail Byrne is 76. Actor Ving Rhames is 67. Actor Emilio Estevez, 64. Actor Vanessa Estelle Williams is 63. Actor Stephen Baldwin is 60. Actor Kim Fields is 57. Actor Rhea Seehorn, 54. Actor comedian Jason Biggs is 48. Actor Rami Malik, 45. Actor Emily Van Camp is 40. The horoscopes. Aries, not playing well with others. The moon's clash with Venus puts you in a moody headspace that lasts until nightfall. Taurus, as the moon and Venus clash, don't go to extremes to help someone who doesn't appreciate the effort. Gemini, sure, a little attention be nice. Pause. Avoid making a scene as the moon and Venus clash. Cancer, what are you getting out of your current relationship? Think about it as the moon clashes with Venus. Leo, seeking deeper connections. As the moon and Venus do their thing, you want a friend to really see you. Virgo, why don't you appreciate you? Beware of overreacting when the moon and Venus square off. Libra, going through the motions. The more you try to get organized, the more you're disordered your life will become today. Scorpio, do you see the long-term potential in your crush? The future is unclear as the moon and Venus clash. Sagittarius, needs some hibernation time. As the moon and Venus bump into each other, avoid compromising your needs to your detriment. Capricorn, attention drifting. The moon's clash with Venus makes socializing, not business, your priority on the job. Aquarius, including a spur-of-the-moment whim, indulging in it. Have fun, but know your limits as the moon and Venus clash. Pisces, hurt feelings, a loved one's snub, puts you in a self-pitying mood as the moon squares off with Venus. You've been listening to a reading of USA Today for Tuesday, May 12th, 2026. We read USA Today weekdays at noon. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Jody
and Alan Blackburn.
Welcome summer with your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We're planning a summer bash bigger and better than ever before. It's Friday, June 26th at Creekside Banquet Facility in Grove, located at the corner of Union Road and William Street in Cheektowaga. You're invited to enjoy a buffet chicken and pasta dinner, your first drink on us, a basket raffle, and Buffalo Music Hall of Fame party band The Boys of Summer from 6 to 9 p.m. Tickets are $50 and support the 160 volunteers who read all the programming offered by Radio Reading. That's Friday, June 26th from 6 to 9 p.m. at Creekside Banquet Facility in Grove in Cheektowaga. Get your tickets now by calling 716-821-5555 extension 3 or online at nfradioreading.org. Thank you to New Era Kep Foundation, Tyverin Law, and Perry's Ice Cream for sponsoring this largest event of the year.
The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another